I'd like to introduce our three panelists coming up. Philip, Leah, and Fritz coming to the stage. Big round of applause. So in this panel, what we'll do today is we'll cover talent acquisition trends for 2024 and how teams need to adapt their search for international talent without losing sight of, as I mentioned before, budget constraints and time constraints to recruiting these people. So if I could give the microphone across and introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Leah de Kruif. I'm Dutch, based in the Netherlands. I'm Global Director of Talent Acquisition with LeanIX, a SaaS company that we managed to scale to around 600 people these days, and with a recruitment team of 10. And global mobility topic is also one of our topics. Nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Fritz Singer. Canadian American, lived in Amsterdam for 7 years now. Global mobility is a special place in my heart, so I moved here with Uber about 7 years ago from San Francisco. But I currently lead talent acquisition for Personio. We are about 2,000 people, mostly across Europe, but also US. We have a people team scattered across those locations and a TA team of about 70.
Hello everybody, my name is Philip. I'm the co-founder of OfferZen. We're a company that helps tech companies mainly hire software engineers, usually undiscovered talent pools, so kind of not the standard, not hiring someone in London, maybe looking elsewhere, so more niche talent pools. And maybe you can hear from my accent, I'm South African, and I moved here 2 months ago.
Cool. 2 months ago. Liking it so far?
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Awesome.
The weather's not great though.
I flew from London this morning. Weather is not great either. So, there's been a lot of change happening over the past 3 to 4 years with business operations and talent acquisition strategies that support them. So as we look into 2024, it feels like there's more change incoming, where talent acquisition has to balance looking for talent at a more global scale, but also sticking to strict budgets and timelines. Does this resonate with you, or have you kind of got a complete different experience?
Yeah, I'm happy to start on that one. So it does resonate with me. So if I think of what's happened, let's say since the start of 2020, I kind of have 3 main themes. The first one is just remote work being a thing. Obviously, it went from 0 to 100 really, really quick. And I think a lot of companies committed to going remote full time, which they've kind of rescinded those ideas recently. A lot of them. The second one is the talent war. I mean, I think there's been an escalating talent war for a long time. I think it kind of peaked in 2021, along with VC funding as well. And now the sort of third thing for me is the opposite of that. It's the downturn in the tech market, and that has made a lot of a bit of a roller coaster for talent acquisition teams, because first remote changed a lot of things. Then you had this massive talent war, which was the sort of perk war, salaries escalating, really hard to hire anyone. And now, budgets are cut. Very often, talent acquisition teams have been cut down. So, now you're under-resourced. And typically, what we're seeing a lot of is the leadership of companies saying to the talent acquisition team, well, look, it should be easy now, right? The market's down. Candidates don't have as many options. Like, come on, guys, you can do this. And in theory, it would have been easier if everything else had stayed the same. But now you have a smaller team, and maybe lower budgets, less perks, and often it is actually still hard. And on top of that, a lot of companies have decided that they're no longer remote, or they're now hybrid or in office, and that has further escalated the challenges that the talent acquisition teams are facing.
Yeah, I can definitely echo what you share, but what I also see last couple of years, and the trend will definitely also go into 2024, is of course the topic of diversity, equity and inclusion, which is super important, as well as data-driven decision making. I mean, with LeanIX having 8 offices, including global mobility, relocation, working close with a company like Localyze who support us, super beneficial. As well as, I think, a third trend super important is also Gen AI, where we need to rethink hiring processes, how we collaborate with each other. Super interesting, team is super excited. With my talent acquisition team, we definitely benefit because of the market situation today. So working less with external parties and being much more proactive towards the business and headcount plan. So that's been, yeah, we definitely have a plan and strategy for the next year to push that further globally.
Yeah, I would just add, I think that the challenge over the last couple of years and what we're still facing is a lot of thrashiness in the market and how businesses react to that, whether that's your location strategy, how you think about remote or in-office expectations, and therefore how you bring your talent acquisition strategy into the mix. And so that has just caused a lot of difficulty as businesses shift quite quickly. So I'm hopeful and expecting that next year there's a lot more intentionality in terms of just our principles and how we think about whether it is remote team members or mobility, and it just allows us to be very kind of aligned to the business and what that strategy is going forward. So I'm hopeful that no more big macro events will take place, but obviously we'll see.
Nice, thank you. You all three mentioned talent acquisition strategies there, and is it fair to say that those strategies kind of have to get rethink those strategies and look beyond their own borders, so to speak? For example, looking at talent from other countries, or rethinking the entire hiring process, or even changing up the employer branding. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll start with Mike. I'm a little bit different in terms of just the business that we're at. We're in 7 countries, mostly across Europe, but we are open to hiring in all of our locations, and so because of that, it allows us to really target talent pools across Europe and even in the US. And so that just does kind of remove those border walls for us in a lot of ways, which helps to move quicker and faster. At the same time, obviously that impacts how we think about our product teams or our eng teams being co-located. So that's obviously a trade-off, but we are quite intentional in terms of identifying international talents. We have about 80 nationalities represented across our company, and so we will continue to focus and really utilize our internal employee base to get referrals and tap into markets that we maybe otherwise wouldn't have access to.
Okay. Yeah, I recognize what you're saying with LeanIX. We have 60 nationalities, different nationalities globally, in Europe as well as in the US. And yeah, employer branding needs to be boosted, especially also this year. So we had pretty much a lot of attention on that topic, and it also pays back. But it also gives us other challenges as well, like getting much more inbound applicants, how you deal with that. It definitely increases the workload of the TA teams, for example, as well as automating parallel to that processes to make sure that workflows and the pace is still high, because that's still super important. Yeah, that's good, my experience.
I tend to agree with these two. The one thing that I want to add is just the question is kind of, do you have to look cross-border? And I think right now, I mean, to your point about it, it's a little bit easier now to do sourcing yourself. You need less agencies, and in general, it is easier. So I would say for many companies, it is true that they don't need to look cross-border today. I think the challenge is going to be that maybe next year that is going to change. And so I think if you set your entire strategy based on how the market is today, you're going to be caught flat-footed next year.
And Philip, obviously, OfferZen focus on developers. Do you see there being a specific difference into hiring developers and having developers contact companies like specifically?
I mean, I would say that the things that tend to get in the way of this, and we can maybe dive into that deeper in another question, is that companies typically aren't very deliberate about their hiring strategies when it comes to location. So I want to preface this first. We work with companies that are on the smaller side, so basically typically less than 500 employees. And what we found with those companies is it's sort of emergent what their strategies are in terms of which countries they source in. So there's maybe one of the early employees of the company is from a particular country, and then suddenly that entire strategy is for, okay, we hire Romanians because we love Romania, instead of really looking at the whole thing holistically. So I would say is a thing that is holding some companies back is basically, I would say, that is they're just kind of not looking at everything holistically. In terms of developers specifically, I don't think, I mean, developers are always very hard to hire, so I don't think there's anything new there.
I mean, that leads us on nicely into the next question, which is like good talent is everywhere, right? Across the board, across the world. But how do you decide which countries to focus on? Like, how do you make sure across the board which countries to focus on, knowing you have to fill positions like really quickly and cost effectively?
Cool. I mean, we can start with that just because I went. I think the answer that I guess one is like the textbook answer would be is okay. So you look at the talent pool available. So you go, okay, so what kind of talent is in the country? You look at the cost of that talent. You look at the cultural things, and so you take all these factors together and you go, okay, well this country looks really great, and then you have a selection of countries, and you focus on those. I think that's the sort of textbook answer to this question. I think in practice, as I said, a lot of this is actually emergent. So if you look at a typical company that has 200 employees, what happened is, they lucked out on someone from a different country, and then they're now sourcing in that pool. So I think that's in practice what happens. I think the textbook answer is actually pretty good, and if companies actually did that, they would have a lot more success. I think one of the things that makes it really hard to pull off the idea of like being very deliberate about this strategy is that some of the factors are easy to measure and some of them are not. So for example, cost, very easy to measure. You can look at a bunch of countries, you can see what are the salaries, and so you can go, great, South African software engineers are significantly cheaper than Dutch software engineers. Great, cool, that's easy. But how do you measure something like culture? And how do you measure something like competition for talent? Right, that is a very sort of amorphous thing. And I think that's one of the things that makes this, figuring the strategy out really, really hard.
Thank you. But I think also what is in addition important, if a South African software development is much cheaper than, for example, in the Netherlands, suppose if you relocate, it is important to focus on equal pay. And what we hear back from engineers a lot is that what they miss in the recruitment or hiring process is that there is a lack of focus on skills, which they find super important. So my team has a strong focus on skills first hiring, no matter what background or nationality or where they are based, right? Do they fit the skills expected from the hiring managers in their team? Relocation is always an option with all kinds of support what we offer. And of course, it is super relevant for us as well to hire in those countries where we have entities. Right? And there's a lot of benefits to hire in the Netherlands because of multiple reasons compared to Germany. In Germany, we see a much higher retention rate to relocated individuals because of a 6 months probation. Right? So people, once are relocated, we invested a lot of money. After 5 months, they leave. Well, that's a waste, seriously. So we reduce relocation to Germany for multiple reasons. But all these little details need to be considered in order to make decisions or to decide on your sourcing strategy and talent mapping. This is where it all starts with.
I would just add, if you're a company that has multiple locations, I think it is easier to assess kind of effectiveness in your existing population, whether it is through performance metrics in retention figures or engagement scores if you run pulse surveys or just measuring your manager's effectiveness, because hiring is one thing, but retaining is just as important or more important, because otherwise it's just going to be a lot more devastating from a P&L and cost standpoint and also culture standpoint. So really investing in locations that have strong cultures and engagement, I think, is very important. Back to the textbook kind of point that Philip mentioned. Obviously, if you're looking at new locations or sourcing into new markets, it is a very difficult thing to look at, because you can line up all of the facts for leaders and hiring managers, but you can be thrown to the side very quickly based on biases or people that have connections to those markets. So I think it's important to do that analysis and have some sort of almost playbook around how you think about certain kind of talent pools and markets, so you can really kind of turn on that faucet in an easier way, rather than having to do some analysis every single time you're thinking about new talent pools or new markets. But again, back to, I guess, the existing teams that you have, if you can measure some sort of kind of success metrics based on not just how quickly somebody can hire, their employment kind of measurements around engagement and retention, et cetera, I think that helps to make the case when you're trying to add into that specific location.
And you also spoke about like different locations and relocating international hire to a hub. But operationally speaking, when you do make an international hire, how do you make a decision whether to move them to one of your hubs or let them be remote? Is there a playbook there? Is there any kind of rule book that you can share?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. So for us as a business, we are open to anybody being in most of our locations. Obviously, there are specific roles that naturally need to have a presence in a specific market. If it's sales for the Netherlands, having them based here makes obvious sense. If it's an engineer, then it's a little bit more open to any of our locations. We're starting to think more intentionally about co-locating product and engineer teams to drive productivity and effectiveness, especially for more junior talent, because as statistics show, more junior talent just need more guidance and leadership from managers. If you're senior and autonomous, maybe it's not as necessary. And so we're being a lot more focused on the specific locations based on products that we have, based on teams that we have, and ensuring that we can build a bit of a nucleus in each of our markets. And then there's other roles where we're quite open. So if a candidate that we hire in London wants to move to Amsterdam, we're okay with that. We'll offer a very small stipend because that is their personal decision rather than a business decision. And so we do want to give them some sort of soft landing and ensure that it's a positive experience, but we're not incentivizing them to move here per se.
Yes, similar to LeanIX, to be honest. And yeah, like I said before, we focus initially in hiring on those locations where we have entities. And especially this year, we do experience very positively that it's much easier, especially with the skills first focus and strategy here. We managed to fill the position, and similar to Personio, we do incentivize those who we really want to relocate, and those who have kind of like more personal reasons for relocation. We give them a small incentive there, but it fully depends on the business needs and the request of the business.
So as I said, we typically work with smaller customers, so I'll just report back on what they do. I guess there's kind of three things. The one is just relocate immediately, the other one is stay remote, and then the third one is kind of a hybrid where it starts remote and then relocate. So those, say, the three categories. I would say the most popular thing we see is just stay remote. That has some dangers to it, especially if you're building a remote team for the cost reasons, so you're hiring in a country specifically for cheaper labor. And I mean, that is in itself is fine, but I think if that team becomes, let's say you have a very in-office culture and you have a really great culture and it's designed for the team based in Amsterdam, and then you have this kind of B team that's the cheap team in another country and they're working remotely, and then I would say that's the worst of all the options. Is that, and you do see that sometimes, and that typically doesn't work out. So what we see that seems to work the best is that a company really puts effort into the people that they hire remotely, even if they stay remote, that they are doing something special for that group of people. But I would say is the thing that companies do when they get into this type of thing, companies that have been building teams within a particular country and they do their first hires, they typically start with remote. And then they kind of feel it out and they go, wow, these people from whatever country are actually pretty nice. It might make sense to bring them to Germany or whatever is the case.
Thank you. And we focused a lot now on searching for talent, but there's also a possibility to attract that talent through employer branding. So what trends are you seeing in this field that might help people in the audience make best use of their time and resources?
Yeah, happy to take that one. Well, what is super important for us is that we engage, especially in niche communities. So every recruiter is departmental organized, so within their space, whether it's customer success, sales, engineering, they build and they engage within communities online, and also especially job boards in very specific niche are super helpful for us to attract talent and to build our brand within those communities. Since a year and a half, 2 years now, we are building a hub in Australia. This was completely new to us. Due to the time zones, you have about a bunch of challenges as well. Well, I don't have to explain the challenges, but we do see that building that engagement in those specific SaaS communities located in Australia definitely helped us to build a team successfully. So this is for us, and additionally, all the important things related to employer branding is more important than ever. But it's also very helpful for us as ambassador program, where our employees are the ambassador of the program, to push also into referrals, because a positive voice online on socials still is a very cheap way to attract amazing talent.
Yeah, I think that employer branding generally can go one of two ways. You can go kind of that scrappy organic route, which is obviously something that I think is always important. It's like, how do you bring the internal kind of voice and experience to life, and making sure that, you know, if you have a finance team that you're supporting, you get the finance team out there and present, and so people actually kind of see what it's like to work for that team, and really engaging with your internal teams is quite important. And I think that's a very easy, scrappy way to do it. Obviously, I think leaning on your leaders as well, because they're the face of the team or the business, and so making sure, I think it was Miro having site leads, which resonates with me quite well, just in terms of making sure you have somebody who is almost leading kind of the branding for your site or your location. I think that's quite important. I think if you have the resources and the opportunity to rely on external partners in a very thoughtful and intentional way, I think whether that is partnerships with companies that are leading with content creation and or just branding broadly. So in the US, we've just launched, built opened a New York office in the last year, and we have about 50 people now across the US. And so we're intentionally kind of partnering with specific tech platforms that are going to really drive our branding there. But there's D&I partnerships that I've had a lot of experience and success with. So being very targeted as to who you're trying to get in front of and attract talent from, I think is very important. So you can go, obviously, the resource heavy route, which is leaning on more external partners or working through campaigns, or just through the organic route. But I also think being able to really package your internal offering in a very thoughtful way, so really having an EVP or something you stand behind is important. And it's not just the experience, but it's also what are you offering. So benefits, how do you think about remote work or in-office work? Some people want that internal or in-office collaboration. So if that's who you are as a company, being very, very intentional and thoughtful about how you bring that to life is necessary and important, because those are the people you want to attract, but also retain. If you're very principled as to who you are as a company, you're going to attract the right people, and hopefully keep those people for longer, rather than trying to paint a picture that maybe is not the reality internally. So I think being very thoughtful as to what you are packaging and putting out there is super important.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. My view of this, I guess, just let me go with a more contrarian view, is that I think what a lot of companies end up doing is they read these reports, which is basically, and we're guilty of making these reports, and I do think they're useful, but they have a downside, which is you read this report and it says, like, software engineers want these kinds of things, and it talks about what benefits they want, what perks they want, and all the things they want. And then what a lot of companies do is they take kind of a shmush of all of those things, and they go, cool, we're going to do those things, we're going to have those perks, we're going to do that, we're going to have these flexible hours, we're going to, and they take all these things together. And obviously, that has okay results, but I think what you were saying is about being very intentional about the kinds of people you want to attract. Rather, you don't really want to attract the average person, you want to attract a particular kind of person, and I think being deliberate about what does that person want. So the sort of example I always keep in my head is the Navy SEALs. Now, if you were to ask the average person, do you want to join the Navy SEALs? They would say, hell no. It's basically they torture you, essentially, and then make you stronger throughout that process. But for a very small subset of people, this is their dream. This is what they wake up. They're a teenager, they're 16 years old, and they're lifting weights, thinking, one day I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. And I think more companies should think of themselves as Navy SEAls, not necessarily in the torturing your employees way, but rather in the what is the thing that people, this subset of people that would really love to work with our company, instead of the average person. We have these things. So I guess let's take something more similar to the Navy SEAls. Like, a lot of companies in the talent boom, at least, were talking about maybe we should have 4-day work week. Now, there's another group of people that would hate to work at a company like that. They would say, I want to work with the world's best people. I want to build the future. And so the kind of company that has a 4-day work week sucks for me, because clearly those people are not that ambitious. They're not trying to fully change the world. So, if you're Elon Musk, you want to track those people that go, screw the 5-day work week. We want to do the 7-day work week, right? And there's a group of people that want that. Anyways, so I'm not saying everyone should do the Navy SEALs, but like the essence of that thing, trying to really find out what makes you unique, that people would love to work at your company.
I'm definitely stealing that Navy SEAL analogy. That's brilliant. Also, the second panel in 2 days that's mentioned Elon Musk, which is a interesting thing. So I think we have one last question, which is, what are your predictions for 2024 in terms of talent acquisition? Like, what trends are going to change going into 2024?
Well, I think tech and automation, Gen AI, is for TA, for talent acquisition, absolutely, I think, number one, with all its challenges, so to say. DEI is super important, remains super important, not only externally, but throughout the entire organization. So it needs to become, more, how do you say that? It needs to be in sales and customer success. Whenever there's a bunch of speakers, equal pay, a lot of topics related to DEI are super helpful for us to attract talent. And the third, I would definitely say the foundation, which has been set in a lot of companies or TA teams related to data-driven decision, becomes even more important to understand all the measurements and the results delivered.
I plus one to all that. I don't have any revolutionary kind of comments on this one. I think the AI topic is going to continue to resonate throughout years ahead. As an HR tech company, this is very top of mind for us. How we bring it kind of front and center for our products and our customers. And in the TA space, it's going to continue to take place. How do we make sure that the manual and repetitive tasks can get automated and we can just drive more efficiencies and ultimately kind of leading to the second topic I think is going to continue to resonate through next year is just doing more with less, unfortunately.
Of the impact of Gen AI, and you're already seeing this in sales, which is basically you had sales development teams reaching out to companies, with a semi-customized message and to try and book a call. And that entire industry is basically dying, or at least changing rapidly because of Gen AI, because you can now do that on a mass scale. And I think job applications are going to change in the same way. So you were talking about automating things. I think we are going to have a bot that just applies to like thousands of jobs on your behalf. And I think it's going to add a massive amount of noise in all systems, because you're going to be able to create your resume with AI. Then you're going to be able to source relevant jobs for you with AI. You're going to respond to emails with AI, and someone's going to build all these tools, and people will pay for them and use them. And I'm worried about that. And I think it's going to be a kind of AI wall, right, where the ATSs are going to build features in to try to take this and just help you filter, and then the other tools, I don't know, it's going to be terrible. But also wonderful. So let's see.
Sounds like a very chaotic world next year. Let's see what's going on. Do we have time for, no time for Q&A, but any one of our speakers will be around for networking, or I'll be around as well. So thank you everyone. Huge round of applause for our